Hi, Dave. I'm really excited to have you on board. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, it's a great pleasure. So you're a designer, illustrator. Follow you on LinkedIn. I've been checking out your content over the last few months. You've been entertaining us. It's given us some laughs, some amusement. So perhaps to kick things off, you could tell us a bit about your journey, your careers to date, how you got into design.
Sure. Well, I've been doing it forever, really. Was certainly drawing, but only really started. Well, school put me off it completely.
Mhm.
Like designing and illustrating. I hated school with a burning, fueling passion. So
It's not, yeah, I didn't not so recognized as a traditional path, really, in some
no,
respects.
no. So yeah, I think it does. I mean, I think it's even the same now, even though, it's been a while since I was in school, but it's still not regarded with any sort of importance.
Yeah.
So I'd kind of gone through my teens thinking I want to be a graphic designer. And I did work experience for 2 weeks back in Belfast in a graphic design studio. And even that was like, oh my God, I don't want to do this. Because
Really?
you know what it's like sometimes people take on kids for work experience and
Mm.
they just throw them in a corner and give them the most mundane. I think I was putting name tags into lanyards
Oh,
for an event that had hundreds of people going. So like the first day was just doing that, like cutting them all
yeah.
up, like cutting them all up and then sticking them into lanyards and putting the little tag and setting them aside. And that
You
was
did
like
well
day
to
one.
not let that put you off then. You did well to not let that deter you.
Yeah, well, that didn't put me off too much, but then the rest of school did. So I was like, oh, screw this. So I went through like my teen years thinking, right, I'm definitely going to do this. And then education stopped, and I went, no, that's not going to happen. So kind of went through my 20s just doing a string of jobs I didn't really care for, not wonder what the hell I was going to do, but kind of kept it going as a hobby, sort of loosely in the background. And then sort of when I was like sort of 29, 30, started to take sort of clients on the side. So it became like a side hustle type thing. And the more and more I got into it, I started to take on more clients than I could handle with my full-time job. So rather than, and this is, I'm probably like 32, 33 at this time. So I'm kind of thinking, oh, I should take the gas off that for a little bit because I'm taking on too much. So rather than thinking, let's quit the full-time job and go into it, I kind of did this peak and trough thing for a little bit where I'd keep it going. It would get too busy. So I'd, step back from it a little bit. Yeah, it wasn't until I was 30, hold on, 37? Yeah.
Oh, you look too young for all this.
Oh, stop
Didn't
it,
think you were there
you.
yet.
Stop it, you. Yeah, yeah, 37, and where I went, what am I doing? I have to be doing this. I knew I could never do it working for somebody else because I'm one of those. I've gone through life writing on CVs that I work well in a team, but actually I don't at all. Um, I'm better on my own. So I knew I never wanted to do it working for somebody else. I just needed to sort of, you know, get enough sort of confidence together to just go out and do it on my own. So I did that at 37. That was 3 years ago. Now I've been doing it for 3 years, and it's been wonderful so far.
Yeah, yeah, and that's really interesting actually for anyone who's listening or watching who's thinking about wanting to take that leap, because there is in some respects never completely the right time, because you're never going to have a full-time job whilst holding down a full-time job. So you have just got to at some point go for
Oh
it.
yeah, my income just went through the floor. But I was reading a lot. I mean, a lot of stuff about just make sure you've got like the way I did it was I made sure I had enough saved up. You work out like what you just need to barely survive for a
Yeah,
month, and make sure you've got like 3 or 4 months of that sort of
yeah,
backed up as a little buffer. So you can survive for 4 months if nothing comes in for the first 4 months and just work and don't get me wrong, like it's been hard work, but
mm,
it hasn't. But that old cliche, like it doesn't hasn't actually felt like properly work, even though it
yeah.
has been
Which is,
hard,
yeah, if you
been
find
hard
something that
graft,
you love
but
that you're doing, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, 3 years of
Amazing,
stuff.
amazing. So you say you can't work within a team. So is most of your work with the end client, or do you work with agencies, or how do you tend to split your work?
Yeah, no, I do. See, it does make me sound like a bit of an asshole, but no, I don't mind. The thing is, I think it's through it's long periods of time. with teams is
Yeah.
the thing that I'm like, no, I need my own. I think it's born out of the fact that I didn't realize this until I decided to go off on my own, but I'd done so many jobs and had always like suggested things we could do, little ideas and like little extra revenue streams we could do, or little marketing ideas, and they were always sort of pushed down or silenced because they were maybe a bit, I don't think I'm comfortable with that, or maybe that's a bit too edgy, or calm that down. And I hadn't really realized that it just kind of put me off other people's opinions.
Yeah. And I think sometimes when you are the creative and when you've worked closely with the client, you kind of sometimes know how far you can push it. And actually, is it a bad thing if some of those ideas are pushed too far? Or does the client not like to think, do you know what? I absolutely love where you're going with this. It's a little bit too far for us, rather than having you come to the table with really boring ideas that they were like, yeah, we dismissed that because it's just too dull.
Yeah. It's not so much. I don't mind working with clients. Don't get me wrong; they're fantastic. Especially, I mean, I'm pretty lucky now that I do get the vast majority of people that come my way are people that have seen what I've done, so they kind of get me. They get me, so they come to me because they do want to try something a little bit quirkier and a little bit more interesting. So that's always cool. And I don't have a problem with being told to shut up if an idea is, a bit too much or a bit too daft. But I think it was through the course of my sort of employed life.
Absolutely, people in the team.
It was a solid, no, Dave, shut up. Just be quiet. That's silly. I can't remember what you originally asked me.
The nature of your work, obviously, I know we talked briefly before getting on this, is very much, you can tell you have fun with your work. It's very much comes across in your work and in the way you write and how you share your work. You can tell that you love it, you're passionate about it. Does that tend to lend a certain industry or a certain type of client to want to work with you? How's that panned out?
Not necessarily a specific industry. I've done stuff for all sorts of different companies. It's definitely this sort of client. So I'm exactly like you just touched on. I'm not a big fan of people that take themselves or anything a bit too seriously. Obviously, within there's levels. When you're presenting something on behalf of a company, you're not just going to be disrespectful or do anything too ridiculous, but at the same time, there's far too. I mean, yourself, as you scroll through your LinkedIn feed, the vast majority of it is absolute dross, and it doesn't stand out. So you need to try different things, and it doesn't mean you need to be that risky. It doesn't mean you need to be doing stupidly offensive things just to try and get some attention. It really doesn't. You just need to not be afraid of poking a little bit of fun at some stuff and just being a little bit just humorous and just and it's not even necessarily that. It's showing the personality behind the brand is a massive part of what I do, and conveying that visually. I know you've had Dave Harlan on here before, who's an absolute master at doing that with words. So I just try and do it with visuals.
That was going to lead me on to my next question, really. So do you get involved do you have a vision for the words? Because it was a question that I asked Dave, actually, because obviously in design, advertising, work that's out there, obviously there are two parts. There is the copy and then there is the visual as well. Do you tend to work on some of the headlines if you've got an idea that you're working on, or are you totally visual? Do you tend to, the copy's already been taken care of? How does that work on projects that you work on?
Yeah, I stay away from advising people on copy generally. It's a whole other complete skill that I have just I can't even touch it. I'm only comfortable writing for myself because I find that quite easy because I just write the way I speak, so I don't really put much thought into it, if I'm honest. I've had people ask me before, to write things for them, and I've tried and I'm awful. So I'll generally try and stay away from it. I mean, there'll be little things like, if you see something, if I see something that I know instinctively is wrong, I will, I'll always obviously suggest, well, you should probably change that, or go and hire someone who's going to like.
Yeah.
Generally, when people come to me with branding projects as well, if they haven't sorted out their tone of voice or any of that kind of stuff first, I'll always advise them to get that side done first before you start looking at the visuals. Because that's the real foundation. How you're actually speaking is the, should be sorted first. But yeah, if I'm having to complement some copy with a visual and I look at it and it's all about them and there's nothing about the actual, customer or who they're trying to target it towards, and I know that you've written that with the wrong person in mind. You need to just tweak it. I'll always mention little things like that without actually writing the final thing, because I shouldn't be trusted with that at all.
No, it's interesting. It's interesting because I think sometimes when you do have a mad sort of creative idea, sometimes there's perhaps just a headline in mind, or you've got an idea, but I suppose it depends what you're designing, doesn't it? If it's more of a full website or brochure or something with a lot of word into it, then absolutely leave that to the copywriting pros. But I think if it's just a snappy ad, sometimes I think designers can be good at coming up with the headlines as equally as well as the kind of copy creatives as well.
Yeah.
So do you have a dream client then, who you would think who you love their work, or you think, do you know what, that brand absolutely aligns themselves to what I do, I'd love to work with them?
Oh, a brand that exists?
Yeah.
There's one I've been looking at a lot recently, actually, which is Manscaped.
Oh, yes.
Not because of what they do, but just how they approach it. Their copy's great. They approach everything with a real sort of tongue-in-cheek little, thing. I was a fan of Oatly until recently. I saw they'd started to go after some small little mom and pop company who had referred to oats in their products, so they were suing them. But apart from that, generally they're the way they do, like, they've got a nice, cool little illustrative style, and again, their copy's on point, and it's mostly that. There are tons of brands. I'll normally be attracted to someone who's just treating things with a bit tongue in cheek. And
I think as a designer, sometimes it's almost quite appealing to go for the ones who don't look amazing, where you can see a real transition as well. Because sometimes if you pick the brands out there that are doing everything kind of quite well, they've already got it. So I'd imagine you've seen big transformations then over some of the clients you've worked with. Do they come to you? Do you work on the branding side? Do you do the brand guidelines? What's the nature of your work?
It's a bit of everything, really. I do full branding projects. With the whole branding guidelines and the colors and the fonts and the whole shebang. What I've kind of realized recently, especially when you're talking about brands, is I've kind of gone. I've had a weird sort of turn recently and gone backwards. I don't know how you feel about this, because your background's in design as well, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a designer. Yeah.
I'd be interested to get your take on this as well. So, the whole oversimplicity of everything at the minute.
Yeah.
And we've kind of hit that sort of tipping point where it's now pissing more people off than it's actually appealing to them. And as much as I'm a fan of simple design, I'm starting to really dislike it, because it's becoming far too banal and bland, and it's taking all the life and soul out of, because everybody's thinking, right, well, this has to apply on a little app icon, and it has to do this and this and this, and there's ways to do that without completely stripping something down to like
the character out of it. It's funny actually, because it's just come up on a project, one of the jobs we're working on at the moment, which is actually a website, and we were looking at how sections are displayed on this particular site and click through, and we almost approach it very minimally, but we're just having that conversation at the moment, and a couple of us are sort of thinking, but have we gone too far there? There's no images, there's not that much description. Try and think of it, not everybody is a designer. This is people using this site who are wanting to be guided, they're wanting information. So actually, by stripping too much away, yes, it might look beautifully clean, but at the same time, they're not looking for, is this going to win an award? They just want to be able to use the site. What, on that point, what's your thoughts on menus on sites then? Because Are you a fan of the kind of burger style menu where you strip everything away and then it drops down when you want it to keep the site quite clean, or what are your thoughts in that area?
I suppose when it comes to like site navigation, it is a little bit different because it has to be so clear and concise what you have to do, and you can't be throwing too much noise at people. Especially with the whole. I mean, when people click on a site, I don't know what it is now. I used to be really into reading up on all these figures. It used to be under 3 seconds. You had to grab someone before they'd made up their mind. I'm sure it's the same, if not less now. You have to. It has to be so clear what you have to do the second that you land on the site, and any over complication that's just not needed should be stripped away. So sites are almost a separate beast, I think, when it comes to stuff like that, because we are all so impatient when we're looking for things online.
I think it's hard with design also. There are trends, so as you've talked about, things being minimal, and I suppose this is where it comes into play, where when you're working with a client, things do date, things do change. So I think that's why you want to be, would you recommend with clients that you're working with, that assets need to be regularly reviewed, updated? Because being a designer, you look back at your work from 2 years ago and things just look dated. You just look at it and think, oh, it just makes me cringe a little bit looking back at that. And it's like fashion, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it is. I'm terrible for that. Actually, I hate things I've done the day after I've done them.
That's quite extreme.
It's pretty bad. It's sort of like it's a good and a bad thing, because it's always, I think, as long as you're proud of something when you've done it, it's good, and there's just this real sort of self-deprecating twat in the back of my head always having to go at me, like, the day after something's done, like, oh, you could have done that. You just let it go. And I think that's always kind of encouraging you to try and get better and blah 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 blah.
I think that comes back to when you need to take a break as well. I know if you, as a designer, when you've been working on something for so long, you get to the point where you just think, I couldn't tell you if this is terrible or if it's amazing. I'm just going to close it right now. And then if you look at it tomorrow and you think, actually, that's okay, I've impressed myself on this one, you're probably on the right track.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you can impress yourself 24 hours after you've done something.
Probably not 24 months later, you'd be at the point where you're thinking this is a bit dated now, but that's okay, because that's your chance to redo it.
Yeah, exactly.
So obviously a big proportion of your freelance time has been in lockdown. How's that impacted the nature of businesses that you've been working with? Have you brought in quite a few new clients throughout that time?
I've been really fortunate, actually. That last year was really good for me. I always cringe when I say that, because I know some people have had a horrendous time. So I don't ever want it to appear like I'm gloating about it, but it was good. It was a really good year, and I attribute most of that to LinkedIn, actually. Most of the new work that I got last year came through that site, and there was a lot of, I probably did more logo and branding work last year than I'd done before, and it was a lot of new businesses starting, people changing what they were doing. I think it pushed a load of people into moving forward on ideas that they'd maybe just been sort of procrastinating about, or maybe a bit apprehensive to go forward, but they're like, nope, screw it. And then obviously a lot of people were taking their digital presence a lot more seriously last year that they possibly weren't doing before. So yeah, I had a very good year last year, and it was and I'm very glad that I'd started taking my online presence seriously prior.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up LinkedIn and moved on to LinkedIn, because that's an area that I wanted to talk to you about. So you've built up an impressive following on LinkedIn. So, I mean, LinkedIn used to kind of be the platform where it was like you upload your CV and you have your contact details there, but you didn't really ever regularly post on it. So at what point did that change for you then? At what point, how long have you kind of been taking LinkedIn a bit more seriously as a networking platform, if you like?
Just over 2 years. Okay. So I was doing it for a good 7-8 months before everything went bonkers. And So I'd been freelance for just over a year, and I'd got most of my work from going out and networking. And obviously I did have clients and referrals from the sort of side hustly side of it that I was doing prior. But I thought, no, I need to get online now, man. This is ridiculous. I need to sort of try and allocate some time for it, because especially when you're just starting and you're trying to figure out, right, where am I getting my work from? How am I fitting it in? I need to be over delivering on stuff, because it's just, yeah, this is just the way I'm kind of built. You just have to over deliver on everything you're doing. And then how much should I be charging? And all of those things are screaming around your head. You don't have, I didn't have time to even consider posting anything on social media. So when I started to become a bit more comfortable with how my days and weeks were panning out, I thought, right, let's get some time aside and do it. And I'd always just dip my toe into stuff like Instagram and Facebook and stuff. But always, one post and then nothing would happen. Then you get annoyed and leave it for another couple of weeks and then try something else. And so obviously nothing ever worked. So I thought, right, I'm going to take 6 months and I'm going to choose one and I'm going to go hard on it and see what happens. So Instagram is normally, for people that do what we do, it's visual, it's blah, blah, blah. That was probably the obvious choice, but I kept reading more and more about how the organic reach on LinkedIn is so strong. And so I started looking into it a bit more, and I was trying to find other designers on there who were making it work.
Yeah.
And I couldn't really find any, apart from the obvious ones like Christo, who's massive everywhere. I couldn't really find anybody else, any creative in general, actually, that was on there and putting time into it. It seemed to be a lot of people who, the likes of people who try and tout. I don't know why I find that word hard to say. They type themselves out on sites like Fiverr. A lot of those types were using it and just showing work that they'd done. So it was just, here's a thing I did. Go to my profile on Fiverr. This will cost you a $5. There you go. And no one was engaging with that stuff because they didn't really care about it. So I couldn't see anybody doing anything remotely interesting or taking it seriously. And at the time, the job that I had prior to going freelance and doing this was in the music industry. So the connections that I had were all in music. And I only had maybe like 300 connections or something. I thought, right, well, none of these people are going to care what I'm doing now. So I stripped it down to almost zero.
Right.
I disconnected with a load of people and started from scratch really on it. And started trying to connect with some people, and again, looking through the sort of feed, thinking it's quite dry on here. It's very dry. I mean, it's dry now, but 2 years ago it was drier. So I thought I should look at this as an opportunity rather than, oh my God, this site is boring.
Yeah.
It's oh my God, this site is boring. That's amazing. It's going to be easy to stand out. So I tried to sort of reframe it in that way. Started with the usual drivel. I mean, it's drivel looking back on it, but I started sharing blog articles that I'd seen that I liked. It started with the occasional picture of me over an iPad doing some work. Started sharing some other stuff that I'd done, and it was all just kind of dying on its ass. So I was just testing certain things, and then I hit that realization, that thing that I mentioned earlier on, where I've spent so long in other businesses being employed by someone else who would stop me from doing what I wanted, stop me from going out with an idea. No one could do that now. So screw it. Let's actually come up with some ideas that are probably a bit daft and just have fun with it and see what happens. So the first one that really worked for me was a parody ad that I did. That was taking a well-known brand and putting them in a scenario that they would never conceivably put themselves in, and mock up some ads for it and mock up how the homepage of their website would look and just throw it out. And it involved some porn, but there wasn't actual porn on there. It was just the suggestion of a tongue-in-cheek version of how this brand could like a mocky fun version without it being anything actually lewd. So tried that. I said, here's a parody ad campaign, and I put it out, and I expected nothing to happen, but it went very, very well. So that post on its own, my inbox went bonkers with it, from a lot of people who said, I can't be seen to be publicly appreciating what you've done.
With it.
I can't be seen publicly to like what you've done, but I wanted to get in touch to tell you that I absolutely love it.
Brilliant.
And then they ask more questions about what I do, and then, I'd be interested in blah, blah, blah. So I got tons of work off this one little thing that I did. And it made me realize the potential of LinkedIn. Because I think at the time I posted that, I maybe had 500 connections, maybe something like that. And LinkedIn showed it to almost 1 million people.
Wow.
So that was the point. I'd heard about how strong the organic reach is, but that was the first time I'd seen it properly.
And I suppose that's a great example of how you have used your skills. So without your skills as designer, you wouldn't have been able to create that post, but you've not made it anything about you. It's almost something that's quite interesting, engaging, and you've thought about how you can entertain rather than here's a project I've worked on.
Yeah. It's almost similar to what we said earlier on about the copy. If you word things in a we do this, I do this, I'm great. But if you actually flip that on its head and put everything towards the viewer. So, and that's what a lot of people who do what I do post on social media, that here's this thing I created. Here's this thing I designed. Well done. I don't care. Scroll. You've got to do something that's of some sort of value to the person looking at it, whether it's giving them a smile, it's teaching them something, all the usual drivel. So it just sort of taking that sort of idea of putting a parody ad campaign together shows that you can think of odd things, which is beneficial sometimes, shows that you have the ability to execute it. And there it is. So and it's amusing people at the same time. So it was kind of like this sort of triple win type thing. So that was the point where I realized, okay, I think LinkedIn's a good one. And I'd been using it sort of for like a good 4 months with not much happening up to that point.
Okay.
So I'd put a lot of work into it, 4 months of nothing, and then it kicked in, and I realized, right, I need to show some humor on here now. And I think this can work. And ever since then, it's been a great.
I bet you were quite nervous to follow up then on that first post. I bet you were thinking, how am I going to top this now then?
Yeah, no, I've still never topped it. I still never topped it. But in saying that, another thing that I've learned from LinkedIn is the numbers on there are so unimportant. I've got just as much work from something that's had 50, 60 likes on it as I had from something that's had 5,000 likes on it. So it's the numbers aren't important on that site at all. Because people who are on there, they're in a business head sort of when they're on there, just as much for promoting themselves as they are for in the back of their mind thinking about all these things that they've got going and they might need professional help for. So it's an awesome site, and it's got if you use it properly, and like anywhere else online, it does have a horrendous underbelly of just atrocious human beings like everywhere else. But it has got a phenomenal community on there of people who are massively supportive, and it's great. I'm a big fan.
Absolutely. I like the fact that content sticks around a bit more on LinkedIn as well. So I know when I'm looking on there to see something, whereas Twitter's so fast paced, you almost, unless you see it that day or it's trending, it's kind of gone. Whereas LinkedIn, you'll see something that pops up and you think that's brilliant. I really like that content. I'm going to like it. I'm going to engage with it. Oh, it was actually posted 6 days ago. So I think good content does stick around, whereas perhaps the things that do drop off a bit more that aren't as interesting hopefully do naturally filter out. So I think it works well in that way as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
So how do you plan your content for LinkedIn then? Do you almost treat that as like a project in itself now, rather than, do you still share work that you're doing, or do you try and keep it to show you your humor, show your skills off in a different way?
I almost never show client work. I've only actually started recently doing it because it used to be that the sort of thing that no one really cared to see. And I felt it was a bit sort of showy offy. Something just didn't sit right with me about just going, hey, look at this thing I did. It's cool. Even though, everything you post on social media is essentially you going, look at this thing I did. Look at me. Give me attention. It doesn't feel as sort of just as shitty as just going, I did a thing, like it. So I don't do that much, but I still do it occasionally if there's sort of like a cool little story behind what what it is. But because I had so much fun creating, it started off being just something I had to fit. I knew I had to fit in time for. So I would like really be squeezing it in, like in the evenings and the weekends and stuff, like just go. But the more I did it, and the more I started getting into video as well.
I was going to say, video definitely is so much more engaging, isn't it?
Yeah. So the more I started playing around with that and getting into coming up with daft ideas and daft little challenges that I would just give myself to do, the more I enjoyed it. And the more time I started to allocate for it. And then I kind of realized that this is almost a bit of it's a cool little creative exercise, actually, because I'm freeing up enough time every week to just allow myself to have a laugh with no restrictions, no rules, no boundaries, just have an idea, whatever the hell you come up with, just create it and put it out. And if it does well, fine. If it doesn't, also fine. You've had a laugh putting it up. And it kind of gave me that almost, it's kind of the best way to put this. It's almost like a reset button. And when you hit client work the next day, I was almost like refreshed for it.
A bit of sanity check.
Yeah. So it's good to place restrictions on yourself. It's good, getting a client brief and trying to figure out, right, how can I take elements of myself into this, but also work with what they have, they've kind of stipulated. That's as interesting, but it also, like, doing it every single day, when you're the kind of person that has 4 million ideas every day, if you're not getting the chance to kind of implement those, I think that kind of builds up in the back of your head and starts to become an annoyance. So the more time I allocated for it, for creating the content, the better I just became at the client stuff as well, which was odd. So it just kept feeding in and just being this great little tool. So it gave me time to enjoy myself. It became its own marketing at the same time, and gave me a different mindset when I was approaching client work. So I can't recommend it enough. I think for people, the big thing for me as well, I used to be massively into like productivity tools and reading all these books on productivity and watching videos. I don't do any of that now because you're now less productive the more you watch. But that whole thing about the amount of work that you fit into 5 days, if you only give yourself 4 days to do it, you'll probably still do it. 4 days. You just stretch it out to the 5 days because you've got 5 days. So when I said, right, I don't have 5 days anymore, I've got 4. I was still doing the same amount of client work. I'm still doing the same amount of stuff, but I had an extra day free to just be an idiot and
create content.
I
totally agree with that. And I think sometimes if you're given a time scale, it's quite hard because it comes down to the time, money, value, everything, doesn't it? But I think if you give a designer, you've got 3 days on this piece of work, the chances are they might pretty much know what they're doing after the first hour of working on it. Whereas actually you say, okay, let's just spend a couple of hours on this. Let's check in, see where you're at. But I think it's human nature, isn't it? If you've got this time, you think, well, I've got to revisit it. I've got to work on it. I've been given the time. There's obviously the value associated with me spending that amount of time. So I definitely think Too much time can not be a productive thing, can almost make you revisit something when you've got there far quicker in the first place.
Yeah, and you start overthinking things and tweaking things that they might not even need tweaked.
Yeah, because you've got this time to fill. Yeah, I'd agree with that, definitely. No, that's exciting. So you probably built up quite a following then. I'd imagine you've got designers or the creatives that engage with you and then potential clients. So it's a nice audience, nice platform that you've built up, and it's really impressive to see someone who's just having fun with it, enjoying it. The post that I engaged with that you'd done a few weeks ago that I absolutely loved, and I don't know where you found them, but it was, I can't remember what you titled it, but something like the most unuseful stock images you will find online. Are they actually real? Where did you even find those images?
The stock photos we never asked for, but someone went ahead and made them anyway.
That was it.
They're all over the place.
Remind me what some of them were for anyone listening. I know there was one with like some guy with a baguette on his head, maybe. His head was replaced as a baguette. There was a woman looking angry on her laptop at her desk, doing that to a potato. Just no. And that was it. There was a man dressed in a red polka dot dress. Yeah.
With his hair slicked to the side and a little Hitler mustache peeling potatoes.
Yeah.
Who's ever going to need that?
There's a couple of guys at urinals helping each other out.
Yes. Yeah. They were friendly chaps, weren't they?
Yeah. That was interesting.
Yeah, that was cool. Yeah. I can't remember where. This is why Reddit's an awesome place for finding just loads of stuff like that and then just putting it together.
Putting your own spin on it.
Yeah, that was funny.
I like that. That was funny. That did make me laugh because every now and again you do see one of those random images and you just forget, but seeing them all together was just hilarious. And I think designers all over probably thought, yes, somebody else has noticed these.
Yeah.
So how do you, when you're working with clients, do you tend to have one point of contact who provides the feedback to you, who gives you the brief? How does it tend to work for you?
Normally it is just one. It is just the one person. Jane, do you edit this podcast?
You can do.
Do you try not to? Because my door's just gone. So I need
no, that's fine.
Or you can just have a cool 30. Give me 2 seconds. Sorry.
Don't worry, we can totally cut that out. Don't worry, Phil. I normally say that at the start. If there's anything in it that we discuss that you want to be edited, don't worry.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Sorry, my wife's normally home, but today she isn't. So
no, don't worry. So how do you because sometimes as a designer you work closely on something and then you're about to present it to the client and you think, oh, it's a big reveal, I hope they get it, I hope they're on the same wavelength. Do you like to try and book in a meeting to talk through it, or do you give them time to digest the designs? How does that work? Is it different per client?
It is different per client. I very, very rarely just send off an email for the for like, you know, what do you think of this? It's generally on something like this, and just because it doesn't have to take long.
No.
You can just be right. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to walk you through what I've done. I do that quite a lot. Sometimes it makes more sense to actually. There's a great site called Loom. I don't know if you know it, where you can, you film yourself just in a little circle at the side of the screen and share your screen. You record the whole thing, and a click of the button and it does that. So you can literally show the whole thing and talk through it as well, and then send them the link to that recording if the Zoom doesn't work. If you can't book in a time, then go, right, I'll tell you what, this is me walking you through my thought process and what I've done, rather than them seeing it and making up their own conclusion. It just helps. Sometimes, and again, this very much depends on whether I think the person will appreciate this or not. If you've seen any of my videos, a lot of my stuff I film from overhead when I'm working on it. So I've always got a GoPro. On my desk, I've always got a GoPro over my head. So sometimes I will film the process of me making what I'm making for them, and I'll send that.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So and sometimes that just helps, especially if it's something that's got some meaning behind it. and it just helps them see the process, like
Process. Yeah.
from me sketching out the ideas to finalizing the thing. That works well for logos.
Yeah, I can imagine, because sometimes it's like, oh, could you just try swapping that around there? And you think, I've actually tried that, but they'll have seen that in the footage of the process you've used.
So, and it takes them through, it's that whole thing about telling a story, isn't it? It works for almost everything that you do. So when presenting work, it's much the same thing. Whether you have put your presentation together on a portfolio, I try and tell a story. Here's where we started. Here's what we talked about. Then I went away and drank a lot. Then I went away and did this, and and just try and like even poke a bit of fun there and tell the story of how you got to it. And doing it through videos is equally, if not, which is why I always gauge it. And I think this one needs a video. And I will start with just sketching an absolute ton of ideas, and then these are the 3 I'm finalizing it on, and here's me finalizing the thing. And it's all really quick and snappy. I'm not making them sit through the 6-hour long process that I actually did. That would be horrific. But so it just helps when they it also helps people feel more involved as well. They've literally seen exactly what you've done to get it to where it is. So I do a combination of those 3 things generally.
And I'd imagine that's quite nice when there's a few decision makers, but perhaps one of them's been assigned as your contact, but they've got to get buy-in from the others. So you might have done perhaps the presentation in person. They absolutely love it. They've asked questions. You've answered the reasoning behind it. They go away and present it. It falls a little bit flatter. It's not quite delivered in the same way. And I think that hopefully is a nice way of avoiding some of that, really, isn't it? Because they can see what's gone into it, what's involved. I'd imagine that the whole lockdown thing's been quite nice as a freelancer, because it's made meetings remotely more acceptable. So you're not having to travel around all over, present ideas to clients. People are far more open to meeting by video, which is actually amazing for presenting content.
Absolutely brilliant. And it used to be so awkward.
Yeah.
If you had have invited me on here a year and a half ago, I
wouldn't have done it like this.
It just would have been so weird.
It would, yeah.
Yeah. So I remember having the occasional. I think I was using Skype.
Yeah.
It almost seems funny now.
Yeah.
I was using Skype anytime anyone wanted to do a video call, and it was only when I was working for someone who was in America or somewhere like that. Yeah. And they were just odd. But now it's so
normal.
It's so normal. And
so that's provided opportunities, definitely.
It has freed the time it has freed up has just been incredible. I didn't realize before, because it was just what you did. Every time there was someone that wanted to meet up. I mean, I'm in Hertfordshire. I used to travel into London and try and set up, meetings on the same day. So, okay, can you meet me on the Tuesday? Cool. What, 10 a.m.? Cool. And then you contact the next person. Oh, you can't meet me until 1? That's fine. I'll go and sit in a coffee shop with a laptop, like a bell end, for a couple of hours waiting for you. And then, so you try and tie all that together, and before you know it, there's a full day gone.
Plus the trains, plus everything else.
And as much as I'm a fan of sitting and chatting with someone, and that day, if those are 3 first meetings, that they could all come to nothing, and that would be an entire day down in London for with nothing coming of it. So
I think it's brilliant. I think absolutely for your first meeting, for both parties, for agencies or freelancers to check out the client and think, am I the best fit for this client? Is this a project I want to take on? Is it something that, do I think I've got the right skill set? And for the client to kind of get that feeling about you. So I think for both parties, definitely, it's nice that it's become acceptable. I mean, I am a big fan of being around people as well, and I think that you can't completely eliminate that element, but at least you can save those meetings for the clients that you're well underway with and that you're supporting. You get the team together and you know that it's going to be a productive meeting, rather than all the, like you say, speculative meetings that don't end up going anywhere, but you've traveled halfway across the country to find that out.
Yeah, and that hasn't just wasted my time, it's wasted theirs as well.
Absolutely.
So it's just a waste of everyone's time, because as much as they're trying to figure out if they want to work with me, I'm trying to figure out if I'm the best fit for them.
Yeah.
So
I think we've got to take the positives. We've got to take some positives from it. I like it with the doctors as well. I quite like it now that they don't want anybody to come in, and they're quite happy to chat through things over the phone, because more often than not, it's like, I've just got an ear infection, I just need some tablets for it. I don't need to come and see you and catch norovirus in the waiting room while I'm there. I'm quite happy.
Exactly.
Quite happy to do it over the phone. So I think digital communication is definitely a positive.
There are tons of benefits. There definitely are. I just cannot wait to go on holiday again.
Yeah, unfortunately, looking at pictures on the internet just isn't the same, is it?
No, really not. It's really not.
Have you got anything booked?
No. We were tempted, but I'm like, it's just going to keep going back. I've got a friend of mine who's getting married in Florida next year. Actually, that's not until September. That's September 2022. I think we'll be safe.
Postponed? Was that supposed to be?
No, that's a new
Always
one.
been.
Okay. Yeah, we did have a couple of holidays booked last year that we've still got like credit for, but we haven't rebooked them yet because it just seems like another, like you're setting yourself up for another disappointment. So no, I haven't. Have you?
Yeah, I have. So we carried one over to Mallorca from last year, but we moved it. It was due to be next week. So, but it was still on the amber list until a couple of weeks ago. So we thought, do you know what? We'll move it back to the end of August. So it will probably be back on amber by some green now. I can just imagine that by the time it comes around, there'll be a reason that we're not going. So I'm trying not to think about it. I'm kind of thinking it's not happening. But it is a shame, because I think, like anything, a big part of it is looking forward to it. And that's sort of been taken away.
It definitely is, yeah.
And it almost makes you feel more stressed and more like you need a holiday. The uncertainty of, am I going or not? I just want to know what are the airports going to be like with all these tests and all the rest of it. So,
in saying that, I went back to Belfast, where I'm from, a couple of weeks ago, and it was a week with really, really good weather. Yeah. So it actually felt like being on a holiday.
Good.
So that was nice.
It's not something you'd normally associate with Belfast.
I've never come back from Northern Ireland with sunburn before. That was weird.
Amazing.
But it was good. It was good, yeah.
Oh, that's timed nicely. And I know you've been talking to Hannah in our team. You've got something exciting coming up, which is a creative community venture. Is that something you're allowed to talk about? Can you tell us a bit more about that at the moment?
Yeah. So my plan is to launch this at the end of the month. And
end of July.
Yeah, the end of July. Sorry. Yeah. This is inspired by what kind of happened with me when I started creating content. So exactly what we said earlier, when I started freeing up more time during the week to do whatever the hell I wanted with no rules, no restrictions, the rest of the week just became a whole different ball game for me. It was, you were looking forward to that day. You were also recharged for the work you were doing. It became stuff that I could then put out and do some marketing with. Like, everything about it was brilliant. And I don't think people do it enough. So what I'm creating at the end of this month is, alongside my YouTube channel, is a Discord server where I want to get people in there who are visual creatives, who either struggle coming up with ideas, or their sort of spark for it is maybe like fizzled out a little bit. I just want to get people together and throw little like challenges at them occasionally and little ideas, and we can all go away and play with them and then just share what we've done. And you don't have to share it publicly. You can share it on this group. It doesn't matter. There's no judgment. There's none of that nonsense. There's no winners, no losers. It's just go and have fun and show us what you've done, or don't. Just have fun. And I want to encourage more people to take time out of their week, take whatever time out that they can, because you can always free time up. And
it sounds really exciting, and it sounds
do some daft stuff. So I've got a load of ideas of little like challenges and stuff that I want to do every month, and that will encourage people who hopefully they know they want to do some creative stuff, but maybe they can't think of, you sit with a blank page in front of you and you think, well, what the hell am I going to do? What am I actually going to create with this? I want to create loads of little catalysts that give you tons of ideas that you can then just go and play with. Brilliant. And get a little group together on Discord. So that's the thing.
I think this is the kind of thing we need to see more of in education as well. I think from quite a young age, you get marked out of 10, or it's right or it's wrong, whereas actually, like you say, there's no right answer, there's no scoring. Just be free, just explore, find your personality, develop your confidence. I think it'd be really nice, next stage, maybe something that schools could start to look at on the creative side of things, because I know my daughter's very creative, and I think she would absolutely respond so well to something like this, whereas sometimes if you're not as strong, going back to what you talked about, education, sometimes as a creative, you feel a bit like it's against you a bit, don't you? Whereas actually, if you can be rewarded for being creative and just go away, and the crazier it is, the better. You might not have the skill sets to polish it, to make it finish, but those ideas are what the little nuggets of gold really, aren't they?
And you also, like, when you just completely free yourself up to do something, you learn so much in the process, whether it's about composition or the colors that you're going to choose, or the techniques that you've used putting it together. Even if that thing at the end isn't something you're tremendously proud of, and you wouldn't then go and share it on social media, you don't have to. That's not the point. You've enjoyed doing it. You've probably learned some stuff in the process, and oh yeah, you've enjoyed doing it. I know I said that earlier, but that's the important part. Just enjoy stuff again. So that's the point. I want people to not take themselves too seriously and enjoy what they're doing again, because what the end product is doesn't matter. There's no point in it. Mm-hmm. Embrace the pointlessness.
And break the rules. We're not heart surgeons or anything. We're not going to do anything too scarily wrong. There might be a typo, but actually, what's the worst that can come of it? Just go a bit wild with it. So how do people get involved?
So on the week of, bear with me, I think it's, no, I'm not going to say it unless I've looked. Okay.
Is it the last week of July?
It's the week before that, actually. The week commencing the 19th.
19th, yeah.
So the last week of July, it will be out. So I'm calling it Free Silly. So hashtag Free Silly will be the hashtag that goes along with it. In other words, just free the silly in you and just do whatever the hell you want. So yeah, I'll be shouting about it a lot on LinkedIn and YouTube and everywhere. I'll probably be doing it to the point where it becomes sickening. I'll be shouting about it so much for those couple of weeks. But I'm really, I'm genuinely buzzing about it. I'm looking forward to getting some people involved, and I'm sure
amazing. Really exciting. Well, it's been absolutely fascinating speaking to you. I feel like it's been such a fun conversation, and it's been brilliant. So we will look out for that. And what's next for you then? I think the whole freelance thing still feels quite new. I'd imagine 3 years now. Does it still feel quite new, exciting every day? What's next then for you?
Yeah, it is weird. I hate sounding like a knob, but I do still wake up every morning just like, ooh, what's happening? What are we doing today? Well, I don't ask that question because I already know, because I've planned it the day before. But it's like waking up and just with a little bit of like excitement as to what you're doing. So I am quite sad. I do still have that. And I don't think, as long as I keep this separation between doing work for other people and doing work for myself, I don't see any reason why that'll ever go away. I genuinely think that if I was day in, day out just doing things for other people, I think it would start wearing on me. I think it starts wearing on everybody really after a time. And no matter how much you enjoy it, it is essentially, even though the projects are different and the outcome's different, essentially you're doing what other people want. So, as long as you, and it doesn't have to be a massive amount of time, but just a little bit of time every week to just do your own crap, is massively beneficial. For me, it is anyway, and I'm hoping that it'll be the same for other people, which is kind of why I'm doing this thing. So yes, it's all good.
Brilliant. Last question then. How do you discipline yourself to stop? Because I know it's quite hard when you're working from home, and when we were doing more time from home, I know I really struggled to kind of think, at what point do I just stop now? Because I'm all set up here, I'm at home. Do you have to be quite disciplined? Have you learned to give yourself
this is the one thing that I will completely beat myself up on. I don't know. I'm interested in someone telling me I can't do that. I'm really bad at it. especially over the last year as well, when there hasn't been anything else to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I haven't switched off at all. I think that week that I had away a couple of weeks ago was massive. I really needed that. I was
Probably
about
didn't
to
realise until you went how much
I
you
was
did
about to implode. But yeah, I'm really bad at that. Really, I haven't figured that part out yet. Because I suppose the weird thing for me is all of the other things that I enjoyed doing. Like I enjoy playing squash. I enjoy doing a bit of cycling. I enjoy going out and drinking a lot. I played drums in a band, like we were doing that kind of stuff. All of that kind of stuff just sort of like stopped. So and I'm not a big, I can't stand sitting watching TV. It does my head in. So there was nothing else I could really do but this. And I do enjoy it, so it was fine. So, but it just became,
it's almost like your hobby anyway, isn't it? To an extent.
yeah. But I am terrified. There is a part of me that's slightly terrified that, you know, I will, if I'm doing it like too much, you know, and I don't switch off from it, then there might be a day where I go, I now hate this. So that's my little internal demon going off. I am really, really bad. This is not helpful for anybody listening to this at all. I can offer no advice.
Watching it thinking, I know how to solve this. You might get people getting in touch with you to try and.
I can offer no advice on switching off because I am awful at it. So yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I can't offer much either, I must be honest, because if I'm not doing it, I'm thinking about it. And then sometimes if you're thinking about the work that you want to be working on, I think, well, are you better to just carry on and do it anyway? So
yeah, I'm still trying to figure that one out. But I'm also not too concerned about figuring it out either, actually. Which might also.
I think it'll help once life gets back to normal, because I think it'll be a gradual thing. You'll start saying yes to other things outside of work, and like you say, you can do your work in it. You know, you can get through it. You're almost probably doing that, overthinking things by the time it comes to the evening. So once you start forcing yourself to take that break, I'd imagine it'll start to happen naturally.
Yeah, it probably will. I don't know about you, but the last few weekends, as things are starting to open up and get back to some semblance of normal, whatever that becomes, we've had stuff planned every weekend because obviously people are desperate to do things. And they didn't realize how out of practice we are with going out and doing things, because it's so tiring.
And everything's such a faff at the moment, isn't it? Just gotta remember your mask every single place you go. I was in Manchester at the weekend and it was nice, but you certainly feel like you definitely still, everyone's kind of on edge thinking, am I walking the right way around this bar? Am I going in the right entry? You can see the sort of nervousness in people, because I think everyone's conscious of doing the right thing to everybody else, whereas I think a lot of people think once these restrictions are lifted, I don't actually care now, I'm just going to crack on.
Yeah, we're in a weird point now where everybody who has been sensible and has been taking it seriously and has, you know, followed the rules as much as, you know, it has worked for them, they're now all feeling just insanely frustrated with the whole thing now. I think we're reaching this tipping point now, aren't we, where everybody is bored. I think especially for ones who've been double vaccinated for weeks and weeks and weeks and yet still haven't been able to do anything. So I think as we're getting closer, that's our only way out, I suppose, isn't it? So let's hope so. Anyway, we shall end on that positive note. Hey.
No, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, you too. Cheers.
Yeah, I look forward to keeping an eye on your content and following your platforms.
Thanks very much. Cheers, Jane. Bye.